Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to take a look at the Transformers Legacy Evolution Wave 4 Voyager class Junkion Trashmaster. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comment section down below. Is it a pickup or pass? Now let's take a look at the figure's packaging. So here we have the packaging. Starting at the very front, we have Transformers on the side. We have the Legacy Evolution logo at the bottom of the box. We have Trashmaster in white text with a white Autobot symbol. We have a really cool arc shot of Trashmaster in his really cool kind of garbage truck alt mode. We have an open mode displaying the figure in the packaging. If we do look at the top of the box, we have another Legacy Evolution logo with the QR code. If you do scan that, that'll show his stats. If we do turn to the side, we have two awesome artwork shots of Trashmaster in his robot mode. One more of a close-up of his head and chest, and one more of a wide shot with his really awesome claw weapon accessory. On the back of the box, the figure transforms in 15 steps, so it's a product shot of him and his robot, his alt mode, and showing off those pieces, and his Evo Fusion Gimmick. And on the final side, we have half of the Legacy Evolution works, so if you do get another Voyager from this Legacy Evolution line, such as Bludgeon, you can put both boxes together and complete the artwork. That is pretty much it for the packaging, so let's now get into the review. Here we have Trashmaster in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the details, starting at the very top with that head sculpt. We have some really nice silver for the entire face, some red for the visor, and really nice kind of sandy brown orange mixture for the entire helmet section with some really cool spikes sticking out the side of the face with some more red for that entire kind of spike mohawk on the top of the head. There's some more of that kind of sandy brown orange for the entire shoulder, the form. There's some really nice gray for the entire bicep and a bit of a darker gray for the top of the bicep. Some really cool sculpted and canisters done as silver with some dark gray for the entire hand with some really cool lasers or kind of cannons sculpted into the hand. I actually really like how they're actually built into the figure. They're not removable. I actually think that's pretty cool, and they are Blaster Beast compatible in case you're wondering. As for the chest, there's some really cool gunmetal gray spikes to this entire top section with the windows done in silver with the really cool bars done in orange actually covering them. I do like the leg gray for the entire kind of stomach region or lower chest region of the figure. There is a bit of kibble on the sides of the legs. There's actually some hip skirt pieces, but some of these pieces are actually removable, so the figure is slightly customizable how you want actually to appear on your shelf and in your collection, which is nice. I'll cover more of those details in the customization of the figure in just a sec. Going to the entire crotch, of course, mostly done in red with a bit of a darker brown, some more for the front of the legs and the top of the legs with a bit of lighter gray or kind of lighter brown for the top of the legs themselves, and there's some more of that kind of light brown for the feet with some really cool kind of turrets or sort of lasers at the toes. I'm not sure if that was their intent for them to look like that, but they kind of do to me. And if we do turn to the side, overall, not too bad of a side profile. He does, again, have a bit of kibble, but there's actually some pieces that are removable, so do keep that in mind. I'll cover that in just a sec. And turning to the back, overall, not too bad. He actually has not bad of a backpack. He does have this entire section here, which is removable. This entire front portion of the truck is removable. It actually does come packaged separately. Of course, it is a very important part of the alt mode, so you might want to keep it on. But if you only display your figures, if you like never transform them, if you only display them in the robot mode, you could, of course, just remove this, put it off to the side, and actually put it like in a bag, and it'll have a much cleaner back. But even with it being there, it's really not bad. But it actually does collapse pretty well against the back of the figure. I do like the really cool chains sculpted in. This mostly comes into play later for the truck mode, but it actually looks really cool at the back of the arms. As far as, emptiness goes, he really doesn't have much emptiness, and he actually has quite a few mech-tech ports across the entire figure for weapon storage, so he has a lot of really fun playable options. But that is pretty much it for details. One thing you might have seen actually when looking at the back of the figure, unfortunately, does have hollow head syndrome, which actually seems to be kind of a running standard or kind of a running thing for Junkions. I'm not really sure why. I think every single Junkion so far has had hollow head syndrome. Definitely not the worst scenario case I've seen, but it's still unfortunate. So as for articulation, the head can slightly look up and down, tilt look left to right, and slightly tilt side to side. The arms can move out and in, forward and back. There is bicep rotation. There is an elbow bend past 90 on a single hinge. It's really cool to see. There's also a full functioning wrist rotation, which is also really good to see. If we do move the arms out of the way like that, we actually have a bit of extra room now. Little hip skirt pieces can actually move up and down just to get some added space for the other areas of articulation. This entire backpack section can also hinge up to accommodate the leg articulation. There is a full functioning waist rotation. Do keep in mind this entire section here is actually attached to the waist. The legs can kick forward, back, out to the side. There is rotation at the top of the leg here on a very tight swivel. There's also a knee bend to a pretty good degree, and there's also a pivot forward with the foot and back. There's also an ankle pivot in and out on a really tight hinge. So overall, pretty good articulation. Of course, yes, there is quite a bit of kibble, so you do have to sometimes, move stuff out of the way to accommodate the articulation. Also, I do have to say one unfortunate thing with, at least on my copy of this figure, the tolerances are not the greatest. There's some very loose joints. If you did see me moving the arms, you can see they're quite movable. They kind of flop everywhere. I'd say probably the better area of the tolerances, like the joint tightness, are probably where the legs are concerned. The arms are quite loose, way too loose for my liking. He is able to pull up hose, which is good. Of course, it's not loose to a point where the arm will actually, fall down on its own. It's just when you're actually moving and kind of messing with the figure, you can definitely tell there's some pretty loose joints. I'm actually really happy with the kind of, I guess, double ankle pivot. It can actually pivot in and out, which is really cool to see. We typically don't see that much, but that is pretty much it for articulation. Again, pretty good for a Voyager class figure. He actually does have verse rotation, which is good to see. So as for the customizable parts, which actually someone already mentioned, of course, I already had mentioned this entire back section here. It is quite big, so if you want to, of course, you can remove that. Again, do keep in mind that kind of forms the entire front portion of the truck, so it is pretty pivotal. As for these entire sections here, I really wouldn't call them accessories, but they do actually come packaged separately, so you can actually remove these entire gray pieces. This entire section here is not removable. It's actually in a pin, but these pieces here, you actually can put them off to the side if you want to. They really don't bother me that much because they're really not that big. Yes, it is, kind of chunky, but I think that's probably what they were going for. He was supposed to be quite bulky and chunky and very strong looking. But as for his actual, weapon and accessory, not just these added pieces onto the figure, he has this really cool claw attachment, which can actually store in two different ways. One being the hand. Unfortunately, in my copy, the entire bottom jaw is actually very loose. It pops off quite a bit, so hopefully that does not happen in this video, but there is actually two posts. This other one is actually for something else, so you really don't use that one. You could if you want to, but according to the instructions, they want you to use these two. You can use either one. I'm actually going to use the one closer into the figure, not the outer one. I actually think that looks pretty cool, so you can actually chomp up some, evil Junkions like Axel Grace or some Decepticons. I actually think that looks really cool. I do love the dark gray for these entire kind of back ear pieces, and I love how they actually sculpted these little teeth pieces to actually look like they were kind of welded or kind of stapled on there. I think that looks really good, and there's some really nice nut and bolt detailing on there as well. The second way you can actually store this entire attachment, I'm just going to take it out of the hand and put the arm down. If you actually do flip to the back of the figure, as I mentioned before, there's quite a few mech-tick ports on the back of the figure. If you actually do kind of hinge this entire sort of ear piece up, make sure it's facing up like that. There is two posts and two ports, and that can just plug into place like that. I think that's pretty good storage for this accessory, and that is it for accessories. So let's now get down to a few quick comparisons. Here he is with another figure from the Legacy Evolution Wave 4, that being Detritus. I think they look pretty cool side by side. And now for some Junkion comparisons. I actually have quite a few. Here he is with the only Decepticon Junkion we have so far, that being Axel Grace, and hopefully in Legacy Year 3 they can actually remedy that. Maybe in like the Select line, maybe like a Buzzworthy Bumblebee figure, we could get like a Voyager or an even later Decepticon Junkion. I think that'd be really cool to see, because right now the Decepticon Junkions, Axel Grace, she's actually very, very outnumbered. She's on her own, so hopefully we can actually get another evil Junkion someday. I think that'd be really cool to add to the collection. And now for another comparison of that same mold of Axel Grace, that being Scraphook, the figure that kind of started all the very first Junkion of Legacy Evolution. And for one final comparison, here he is with Crashbar. And for a while, actually, Crashbar was my favorite of the Junkions. Of course, before we had Trashmaster, but Trashmaster actually just took his spot. I think he's definitely my favorite, but they look really cool side by side. And that is pretty much it for comparisons and this robot mode. Let's now get down to transformation. So now for transmission, what you want to do is get the head. You're just going to push this into the cavity like that. Then you're going to get this entire back panel, hinge this over the top, and that's just going to cover the robot mode head. Then you're actually going to fold in the feet like that, fold in the feet like that. Then you can get the entire arm. You're going to rotate the biceps, so just make sure this entire sort of chain panel and the slot is facing in, so it'll actually align with that tab right there. So just hinge this up. Do the exact same process on the other side. So just rotate the bicep. Then you can actually rotate the hand to make sure these little turret or kind of laser sections align up and are flush with this entire chain piece. Do the exact same thing on the other side. Then you can actually disconnect the entire shoulder, and we're actually going to flip to the back. We're actually going to tab both arms and shoulders together. There is a tab there and a slot right there, so it'll just line up and tab into place like that. And there's also tabs and connections on the outside. There's a slot there and a tab right there. that'll line up and tab into place. Same thing on the other side, so just tab that, make sure everything is nice and secure, just squeeze it together like that. Then you can actually get the little side skirt pieces, hinge these out like that. Then you can rotate at the waist all the way around. Then what you want to do is actually disconnect this entire sort of midsection of the figure. As you can see, there is 2 tabs and slots right there. You're actually going to use those same 2 tabs for these slots on the inside of this front portion of the truck. There's also 2 tabs here and slots right there. So just make sure all of that is nice and secure and tabbed into place. Then you can actually tab the legs into place. There is 2 slots there and 2 tabs there. So just align that up and tab all of that into place like that. And sometimes some things can come untabbed. You just got to get those back into place. There's also a tab there and a slot right there that'll just fold in like that. Same thing on their side, just fold that in. And that is it for transformation, but as you can see, of course, the garbage truck is quite incomplete, so you do have to attach the accessories. So the first 2 are actually identical. There's these little kind of pistons, sort of kind of mechanical kind of rod things. Not really sure what they're supposed to be technically called, but you just plug those into place on the side like that. And then, of course, same thing on their side. There's that port there, and there is actually a post on the inside that's just going to plug into place like that. And then as for the funnel accessory, it's actually going to kind of fix up and cover up this entire back section here. So as you can see, you're actually going to use these 2 posts there and the ports inside the hands, and those will just line up and plug into place like that. And then you can just hinge this entire cloth section in like that to fill in that space. And that is it for transformation into the garbage truck mode. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have Trashmaster in his garbage truck alt mode. Let's take a look at the details. Starting at the very front, we have some really nice gunmetal gray for this entire front grille section here, with some really cool gray detailing and some really cool spikes kind of angling down towards the front of the truck, which looks super cool, very war-torn, very post-apocalyptic. I do like how they actually sculpted in some headlights. Unfortunately, they're actually also done in gunmetal gray, so they actually do kind of blend in with the rest of the grille. I think it would have been a good idea if they actually had like some silver or some yellow just to kind of stand out more and not be blended with the rest of the grille. There's some more gunmetal gray and spikes at this top section here. I do like the bars over the windows done in silver and that kind of brown orange mixture with some more on the sides, and a little rear view mirror there also done in orange. I do like the really cool kind of piston gray pieces that I actually showed off earlier. They are removable, so you can actually kind of customize and choose where you want to put them. I'm actually going by the instructions. This is how the instructions in the box show them. That's really just my personal favorite, but of course there is Mechtic ports over here on the tires. It's entirely up to you how you want to display them. You could leave them off to the side if you want to. Really, it's just up to you. And if you're wondering for the entire back cloth section, that's kind of specific. There's really just an assigned place to put that. Again, if you wanted to, you could leave it off to the side, but there's really no other area that actually fits that entire huge accessory. But I actually think it looks pretty cool back there. And of course, it has some really nice kind of dark sand brown color for the rims, with some black for the tire and some gray for the entire inner part of the wheel, with some really nice nut and bolt detailing. One awesome playable feature that Hasbro actually added to all 6 tires, of course there's 3 on both sides, is at the center of the wheel. If you do look at them, every single center of the wheel is actually a Mechtic port like these. So you can actually just get tons of accessories from the other Junkions, from other Legacy Evolution figures, even Stu series, and just fully weaponize this garbage truck, which is just such a fun playable feature, which I really do like. And if we do look at this entire back section here, we actually have some really cool chain detailing. I actually like to actually add a bit of a backstory, kind of a story to why there's chains on him. I actually came up with a pretty cool story that he has those chains to actually keep the figure and the garbage truck together. Like the chains keep him from falling apart, because of course he's a Junkion. He's made of junk, so it actually kind of keeps him attached and actually as his Junkion in his robot mode. I thought that was kind of a cool story that I came up with. And if we do look at the top, there's some more of that gray with some really cool kind of canisters sculpted in there, which looks really nice. We have the huge claw. I actually really wish this was able to open and close. It usually does, of course, when it's separate from the figure, but when it's actually attached like this, it is kind of locked into place, which is unfortunate. But I do like the really cool orange spikes and the kind of dark red spikes as well. And I do like how all these little kind of teeth pieces are actually sculpted to actually look like they were kind of welded on and like mismatched and kind of broken and misaligned, which is pretty cool. And I do like the cool lasers in the back, also done in dark gray. They actually were the hands in the robot mode, but a really good placement for this mode, because you could use your imagination and say they're like huge boosters or kind of turrets in the back if you wanted to. So just such a crazy, awesome looking garbage truck. And I do like the really cool oil canisters on the sides as well. And overall, rolls pretty well. And I do have to say, I usually don't really mention, the weight or how I, feel about like the figure, like how heavy it is, but it's actually a pretty hefty piece, which is surprising. I wasn't expecting it to be this heavy. But now for some alt mode comparisons, I'm of course just going to skip past the accessory storage because I already did cover that. There's the two little piston pieces and the claw piece, already covered that. So I'm just going to jump right into alt mode comparisons. So here he is with axle grease. I think they look pretty cool side by side. And for another comparison, here he is with Crash Bar, and he actually used to be my favorite of the Junkions, but Trashmaster just stole his spot. I think he's an outstanding Junkion, and I do hope for Legacy Year 3 we can actually get some more Junkions. I do know, of course, the Junkions was kind of the main gimmick or kind of the main thing of Legacy Evolution, and they probably will have a new feature, kind of a new thing for Legacy Year 3, but I hopefully maybe, once a wave or like every other wave, maybe like in the Selects line we could get some more Junkions. I do have to say I'd actually really like to get another Decepticon Junkion, because all we have so far as Evil Junkions go is Axery, so she's very outnumbered. So hopefully maybe we could get like a Decepticon Junkion as like a Voyager or a Leader, or just Junkions in general, Autobot or Decepticon. I'd be actually really happy to see. I think that'd be really cool to see in Legacy Year 3, but they look pretty cool side by side. And for one final comparison, here he is with the very first one, the one that started the Junkions off from Legacy Evolution Wave 1, that being Deluxe Class Scraphook. And let me know in the comments of all 4 Junkions we've gotten so far, which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. I already said mine, Trashmaster. I think he beats all of them. He's just my favorite. And that is pretty much it for comparisons and this garbage truck alt mode. Let's now get down to his Evo Fusion Gimmick. So now for Trashmaster's Evo Fusion Gimmick, it's actually quite similar to the previous Evo Fusion Gimmicks we've had with the past Junkions. The gimmick is you can actually take pieces and weapons from previous Junkions and actually add them onto a figure. So if you wanted to take, some of the weapons or the limbs or pieces from Crash Bar or Axle Grease, you can actually add them onto Trashmaster to sort of upgrade him or weaponize them. And vice versa, you could take maybe the huge claw weapon from Trashmaster and actually attach it onto Scraphook or Crash Bar Axle Grease. I've always thought it was just an okay gimmick. I've never really had a need to. It's never really just been my favorite Evo Fusion gimmick. I definitely think there has been better. I think probably this gimmick definitely appeals to the younger audience of Transformers, because I think little kids will have a lot of fun, ripping apart their toys and of course recreating them or rebuilding them with other pieces. If you do like this gimmick, let me know in the comments. It's just never really been my favorite thing. That's just my opinion, but I'm going to quickly show off the gimmick. I'm actually going to go by the instructions, because Hasbro actually did put kind of their own combination or their own example of this gimmick in the instructions, but of course it's not very creative. I'm just going to swap one piece from another figure, but of course you could create some crazy abominations and creations. I've seen some insane ones. Again, just never really been my thing, but let's get into it, and then I'll actually go into the reverse transformation. So what I'm going to do is just remove this entire front portion of the truck, just untab it like that. And how this is tabbed into place is there is 2 tabs here and slots right there, and there's 2 tabs here and of course slots right there. Then you're just going to wiggle this entire front portion off. How this was plugged into place is, of course, there is 2 posts and 2 ports, and you can just swap it out with Axle Grease. So of course Axle Grease is just a repaint retool of Scraphook. So if you wanted to, you could also use Scraphook's front portion as well, but according to the instructions they want to use Axle Grease, so that's what I'm going to do. And again, those same connections, you can just tab that back into place, and there we have the Evo Fusion Gimmick. That's pretty much it for that. Let's now get down to the reverse transformation. So now for reverse transformation, what you're going to do is remove all the accessories. I actually typically do leave the little mechanical kind of pipe pieces on there. If you want to, if they bother you, if they get in the way, you can remove them. The entire back claw piece you do have to remove for transformation, so I'm going to remove that. So just kind of quickly, carefully just remove this entire back section here. It's actually tabbed in by 2 posts and of course the ports inside the hand. So I would advise not to yank it out, because of course you could snap or cause a stress mark on the pegs. So just be careful with that. So you can just put that off to the side. Then what you're going to do is actually kind of hinge these entire little mechanical pieces back like that, just to get some added space. Then you're going to untab this entire front portion of the truck like that. It's actually a very secure connection. Just kind of loosen this like that. So there we go. And how this is tabbed into place is there is 2 tabs here, 2 tabs here, and 2 slots, and also 2 slots. You can just kind of let this hang down like that. Then you can actually untab this entire kind of oil drum section. How this is tabbed into place is there is a tab here, and a tab here, and a slot and a slot. Loosen the exact same panel on the other side. Just loosen that, hinge that forward. Then you can actually untab the arms from the legs like that. How this is tabbed into place is there is 2 tabs here and 2 slots there. Then you can actually separate the legs, flip the feet out like that. Then you can actually get the entire kind of midsection or waist section. You can actually tab that back into place from the tabs I actually showed before. And then you can hinge this entire little kind of mechanical pipe pieces that I showed before forward like that. They'll actually form the entire kind of side skirts of the robot mode. Then you can actually rotate at the waist like that. Let me just kind of straighten out his legs and just place them down like that. Then you can actually move the hip skirt pieces down or in the position you actually like to display them in for the robot mode. Then we can actually go to the back of the figure. You're going to separate the arms like that. And how these are tabbed into places, there is a tab here and a slot on the other side. Also, you can actually separate the entire forearm from this entire shoulder panel. There is a tab and slot, and you're going to flip this entire panel forward. Using that same panel from before, there is a slot and there is a tab on the chest. So just hinge that forward and tab into place. Then you can actually bring the entire arm down, rotate the bicep, and then rotate at the hand. Do the exact same process on the other side. So just tab that panel in, hinge the arm down, rotate at the bicep, and then rotate at the wrist or the hand. And you can just place the figure down. And as for the last few steps, you can actually get this entire top panel here, hinge that back, and then you can just bring the head up on that plate, and that'll just soft click into place. And that is it for reverse transformation. Let's now get down to the final thoughts. Now for my final thoughts on the Transformers Legacy Evolution Wave 4 Voyager class Trashmaster. I'm surprised by how much I like this figure. From this wave, I was most looking forward to Bludgeon and Dreadwing, but I'm impressed with how good our first Voyager class junk gun is. Trashmaster's design is the standard junk gun appearance we've seen with past figures, like the mismatched limbs and the random spikes scattered across the figure. As for accessories, Trashmaster comes with an awesome claw scoop accessory which can store in his hand or on his back. He also does come with other pieces that come packaged separately in the box, but I wouldn't call them accessories or weapons. They're just display pieces. Articulation is what you would expect from a Voyager class figure. With the standard wrist rotation, the legs and arms have good movements, but I think the only area that could be improved is the waist rotation. Trashmaster does have a waist rotation, but he has a lot of back kibble, so it becomes almost unusable. His tolerances could be better. He has very loose joints. The figure can pull and hold a pose, but when holding the figure in hand, he is quite fiddly because a lot of his pieces and panels move very easily. Transformation is very straightforward and fun, which is surprising for a Voyager class figure when you'd usually expect to be more complex. Trashmaster's garbage truck alt mode looks awesome with tons of details like the spikes all across the truck, barred windows, and well sculpted chains that make it look like they're keeping the truck from falling apart. I also like the huge claw sticking out the back of the truck, adding to that post-apocalyptic look of alt mode. What do you think of this figure? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you next time.